Sometimes the most powerful messages aren't delivered in long speeches or detailed reports. Sometimes it's just a single image. Today, we're looking at two graphics that do exactly that. They tell a huge story about conflict and power with just a few photos and one very chilling word. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to tackle that core message, the word eliminated. Then we'll zoom right in on the profile of a single commander before pulling way back to look at an entire regime. After that, we'll figure out what the source is really trying to say, and finally ask the big question, what does it all mean?
Okay, let's jump right in with the thing that's impossible to miss, the one element that really hooks you and anchors this whole message.
So take a look at these two graphics together. The very first thing that jumps out, right, before you even try to read the fine print or make out the names, your eye goes straight to that big red stamp, eliminated. That is not an accident. It is designed to be the first and last thing you see, a statement that leaves absolutely no room for interpretation.
And that stamp, well, it immediately begs a couple of huge questions. First, what exactly is the story they're trying to tell? And maybe even more important, who's the one telling it?
All right, to start unpacking that, let's zoom in on the first graphic. This one's much more specific, kind of like a classic intelligence profile you might see. So this one zeroes in on just one person, Haytham Ali Tabatabai. We get his name, his title, Hezbollah Chief of General Staff, and then these three little bullet points that are meant to tell us everything we need to know about why he's important.
And that first bullet point, it's really key. It immediately establishes his importance by framing him as the replacement, right? The graphic claims he got the job because the previous leadership was, in its own words, also eliminated. It's building a pattern here.
Then they give us his resume. Been with the organization since the 80s, commanded the elite Radwan Force unit. See? They're painting a picture of a guy with deep experience and serious authority.
And then comes the kicker, the final point. They claim he was the top dog, the commander of the whole operations array during the war. The message here is crystal clear. A major player has just been taken off the board.
But this whole thing is bigger than just one guy, right? So now let's pan out and look at that second graphic. This is where we go from a close-up to the wide shot. And wow, the scope here just explodes. We've gone from a single profile card to a full-blown org chart. The title says it all. Senior officials of the Houthi terrorist regime. This isn't just a file on a person, it's a blueprint of their entire leadership. And this is where the sheer scale of what they're claiming really hits you. We're not talking about one or two people anymore. Count them. There are 13 officials on this chart, all with that same red eliminated stamp. Suddenly, this feels less like a targeted strike and more like a systematic campaign. And just look at the titles here. These aren't just mid-level guys. We're talking about the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the Head of Military Intelligence. The claim being made is huge, that they're systematically taking apart the entire leadership structure from the top down. Okay, so what happens when we put these two pieces together? When we stop seeing them as separate graphics and start seeing them as part of one single coordinated message? Well, a really clear pattern starts to show up. You can really see the strategy here, can't you? It's a 1-2 punch. On one side, you have the deep dive on the individual. That's to show you why it matters. And on the other, you have the wide-angle view of the whole network. That's to show you the scale of it all. Different formats, but they're telling the exact same story. And it's not just the story they're telling. Look at the design. The branding is identical. You've got the same logo up in the top left corner, the same dark blue background, the same fonts, and of course, that unmistakable red stamp. This is no accident. It's all coming from the same playbook, from the same source, with a very deliberate goal in mind. Which brings us to the big picture, the final question, really. With all this careful design, this consistent messaging, why even release this stuff to the public in the first place? And that question, well, it gets right to the heart of what modern conflict looks like. Think about it. These aren't just dry intelligence reports. They're declarations. They are tailor-made for social media. They're quick, they're visually powerful, and they make a very, very bold statement. So it leaves us with this final thought to chew on. In this era of information warfare, has a simple, shareable graphic like this basically become the new official communication?